Hey pirate fans around the world, this is the business of plunder. How piracy paid big. Piracy wasn't chaos. It was a ruthless data-driven business model that turned fear into cash. Pirates optimized risk, speed, and markets to turn stolen cargo into spendable money. Across the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, crews moved fast, sold faster, and lived on a razor's edge where every day meant cash in hand or a rope on the gallows. In this voyage, 3 payoffs stand out and will be delivered in full. Which raids delivered the biggest earnings, which ports paid the best prices and looked the other way, and which money tricks kept stolen goods flowing into respectable markets. The map of money stretches from Port Royal to Nassau, from Tortuga to Madagascar, linking capture zones to friendly harbors and onward to merchants who bought almost anything, no questions asked. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy and want to fall asleep with pirate stories whenever you want. Piracy operates like an engine. Acquisition comes first, taking the ship quickly, with minimal damage to the cargo. Liquidation follows, turning that cargo into cash or easily traded goods. Distribution happens next. Shares handed over by clear rules, so the crew feels paid, respected, and ready for the next chase. Finally, reinvestment, repairing the hull, buying powder, stocking provisions, and when necessary softening officials with gifts. By the end, the path will be clear: how pirates really got paid, why that system ran hot for decades, and why it broke down when the world tightened its defenses. The places where loot turned into money form a lattice of bright points across dark seas. In Jamaica, Port Royal thrives as a furnace of trade. In the Bahamas, Nassau becomes a safe bowl where ships can disappear for a few days and emerge repainted, repurposed, and ready to sell their holds. Tortuga, off the coast of Hispaniola, serves as a relay, a place where goods come in grimy and leave looking legitimate. Far from the Caribbean, off Madagascar, Isla Sainte Marie offers an oceanic halfway house on the Indian Ocean roads, where the cargo of a single rich ship can ripple through villages, warehouses, and quays for months. The pattern repeats: capture zone to friendly port to onward sail in larger markets, often under new names and fresh papers. The corridors are invisible on a modern map, but they are traced by memory. Taverns known for quiet auctions, warehouses where doors slide open after sunset, small rooms where a quartermaster weighs coin with the seriousness of a judge. Goods tell their own story. Barrels of sugar that can be sold in hours, leaf tobacco easy to divide, sacks of cocoa, bales of silk and calico that go to specialist buyers, piles of spices whose scent betrays value before a seal is cut, and always the hook of hard money, coins and bullion, because gold is final payment and silver speaks any language. On deck, the payoff system keeps tempers cool and blades sheathed. The Articles of Agreement work like a payroll contract. Every hand aboard knows the number of shares promised. The captain earns a premium, but not enough to make the crew resentful. The quartermaster receives a strong cut because he carries the responsibility of discipline, rations, and the purse. Specialists matter: the carpenter who keeps a hull alive after a storm, the gunner who times a broadside so a prize surrenders before a mast splinters, the surgeon who keeps a cutlass wound from turning fatal. All of them earn extra. Injury has a price schedule: a lost hand, a lost leg, the loss of an eye. Compensation is promised in coin or its equivalent, so no one feels thrown away. When a prize is taken, the weighing and tallying feel like a holiday and a ceremony. The quartermaster oversees the piles. Rings and watches go to a common fund. Goods are noted by type and weight. Small items are auctioned aboard to the men, with proceeds added to the shared purse. Then on dividends day, silver touches skin. The crew knows exactly what was taken, what was held back for ship needs, and who gets what. A transparent ledger prevents mutiny more effectively than any speech. Revenue streams run broader than a single raid. The most famous is the plunder of merchantmen. That means stalking merchant routes, studying sale patterns, and interrupting the predictable heartbeat of trade. Many prizes are practical: sugar, tobacco, dyes, tools, needles, cloth. They sell fast, no time wasted. Luxury cargoes exist and thrill the imagination, but everyday goods keep a crew fed and the ship working. Captured vessels themselves are valuable. A prize ship may be re-rigged, repainted, and sailed under a flag that raises fewer questions. Some are stripped cannon, rope, sails, anchors, timbers, and those parts sell like spare organs in a floating market. Ransom lies alongside plunder on the ledger. A city blockaded for a week pays to make the problem go away. A captured captain buys back his ship with a chest of coin or a promise guaranteed by his owner. Hostages with influential names carry their own price tag. A temporary blockade turns fear into a toll booth. The idea is simple. A harbor learns the cost of delay, and delay means more than lost time. It means spoiled goods, angry investors, and broken contracts. Money speaks, and a ship sails free. There is another market, darker than the night. Human captives and enslaved persons appear in logs and court records as figures under columns marked value. Pirates sometimes route captives into existing slave economies, which pay cruelly well. It is grim and must be stated plainly. People were counted as cargo and converted into profit. This trade, embedded in the broader system of forced labor, shows how piracy plugged into the ugliest circuits of the time. It is not romance, it is money. Smuggling and protection also pay. A captain with a fast sloop can guide slower, fatter merchantmen through a dangerous passage. For a fee, the escort discourages rivals and knows which inlets to hug and which reefs to avoid. In other seasons, the same captain moves contraband, untaxed cloth, unreported barrels, past a customs official who has been encouraged to blink. Safe conduct, sold in whispers, becomes a commodity as real as rum. The irony rings clear. The same crews that raid by week can play security company by month's end. Behind the violence sits a gray room where law and outlaw overlap. Privateering makes that room possible. When kingdoms go to war, letters of marque turn private ships into legal hunters. They may attack enemy shipping and bring prizes into prize courts. Investors fund these enterprises. Governors smile. The captured cargo, if judged lawful, pays dividends. When peace arrives, the skills do not evaporate. Crews are trained, hulls are armed, and routes are known. The temptation to keep hunting lingers. Some men shift to piracy without papers. But the network that supported privateering, merchants, shipwrights, tavern keepers, and officials who appreciate discreet gifts, remains available if the rules are bent a little. A port that has grown fat on prize money does not lose its appetite overnight. Costs make or break a cruise. A voyage without calculation is a drifting disaster. Hulls need care. Planks must be caulked, sails patched, rigging checked. Powder and shot eat coin steadily. Food seems cheap until the crew grows and the cruise runs long. Then salt beef, biscuit, peas, and clean water become precious. Repairs are inevitable. Even a gentle scrape on coral demands time and money. A physician's kit bandages, laudanum, crude instruments sits in the corner like an insurance policy. Bribes form a quiet line item. Money meant not for goods or gear, but for softening the minds and tongues of men who sign papers and look the other way. Voyage math appears in every decision. How far to chase a sail on the horizon, whether to risk a longer route for richer targets, when to head back to sell while barrels remain sound and morale remains high. Velocity is a profit center. A ship that moves fast between raid, repair, and resale squeezes more coin from a season than a slower rival that wins one battle and then crawls toward the nearest buyer. Converting stolen goods into safe money requires laundering. False manifests can transform a disputed bale into vetted cargo. Forged bills of lading may attach a respectable firm's name to an otherwise suspicious load. Neutral flags turn a hunted ship into a ghost that slips through patrols. The quartermaster behaves like a chief financial officer, balancing the need to hide against the need to sell quickly. A tavern may host a quiet auction. The upstairs room fills with buyers who know how to keep their names out of records. Warehouses offer back doors for deliveries after dark. Bribery is not an accident. It is a planned expense. The silver that disappears into an official's pocket returns later as a signed paper that smooths a sale or an assurance that a harbor patrol will be watching a different direction on a particular night. The path from stolen goods to respectable markets is a thread woven through whispers, favors, and cash. Merchantmen and insurers do not sit still. Piracy pushes up insurance rates, and that pressure leads to innovation. Merchants pool risk. New formulas calculate the cost of certain lanes at certain times. Convoy systems form clusters of ships that sail together under the protection of an escort armed to the teeth. Armed merchantmen appear, not true warships but tough enough to make a sloop think twice. Naval escorts patrol the busiest route. Information turns into a shield. Merchants share sailing dates, port gossip, and warnings about active predators. A shipping list pinned on a post in one harbor can guide decisions in another. On a good day for the merchants, a pirate glimpses a convoy on the horizon, counts escorts, and decides not to waste powder. Ports where pirates spend money become boom towns. Nassau grows into an open market for goods and rumors. Port Royal thrives with gold and sin until the sea swallows much of it in a single disaster, leaving stories and shifted sands. Tortuga pulses with work. Carpenters, sailmakers, surgeons, outfitters, tavern keepers, sellers of clothes, and sellers of company all feed from the same trough. Off Madagascar, Ile Sainte-Marie becomes a far-flung node where Indian Ocean prizes refill the island with cash, spices, cloth, and porcelain. Local elites benefit. Money finds its way into new roofs, new boats, and new reach. But pressure from crowns and companies changes the game. A governor who once accepted gifts may discover a change in orders. The hand that once opened a gate now points toward the gallows. To see how money really moves, a few cases make the machine visible. Consider Henry Morgan and the Panama Campaign. A man with papers during wartime can look very much like a pirate to those on the receiving end. But the difference rests on signatures and courts. Morgan leads forces that attack and loot, treating city wealth as prize money. Cash and goods move in a mixed stream. Coin when possible because coin is simple. Goods when the opportunity is too good to ignore. The ransom calculus works like a merchant's sum. A city values its time and its dignity. In exchange for both, it pays. Political cover matters. A captain who can wave a paper signed by authorities reduces the risk that investors will lose everything if a court grows curious later. In the streets and on the beaches, the scenes are messy, but up in the counting rooms, the math stays cold. After the campaign, the actual money travels not just as gold, but as resellable goods, cloth, tools, even livestock. Profits ripple outward. Merchants back home see returns, and crews go carousing with full pockets. Years later, and hundreds of miles away, another scene shows how fear becomes a coin. Blackbeard, Edward Teach stops commerce at the mouth of a vital harbor and turns a coastline into a ledger. A blockade is simple in principle. No one moves without permission. Hostages become a form of guarantee. Supplies needed by a city become bargaining chips. A single item, like a chest of medical supplies, becomes a priced commodity because the city needs it now, not next month. For a few days, the sea is a gate, and the man who built the gate sells tickets. Money is lifted from panic, but the technique also shows restraint. Fewer shots fired mean less risk. The blockade ends when the equation balances reputation boosted, pockets heavier, and no need to risk a drawn-out fight. Bartholomew Roberts demonstrates how speed turns into a factory line of prizes. In a short span, he captures more ships than many crews see in a lifetime. He studies patterns, which routes carry fat cargoes, which seasons slacken patrols, which flags are soft targets. This systematic approach lowers risk. Instead of one big gamble, he takes many smaller bites. Goods that sell quickly are preferred. Prices are stripped in a disciplined way. Warehouses along the coast become familiar rooms. The crew sees frequent payouts, which protects morale. A cruise becomes a rhythm. Hunt, seize, sort, sell, repeat. Each cycle funds the next. This is business in its purest sense, minus the ledgers the law recognizes. Outside the Atlantic world, Qing Shi Zhengyi Sao transforms the South China Sea into a structured enterprise. She leads not a single ship, but a federation, with colors and rules that function like a government at sea. Protection fees are collected, sea lanes taxed, and even fishing regulated. Discipline is strict. Revenue extraction is disciplined and centralized. The machine runs because everyone knows the rules. The money flow is steady, and the organization reduces random risk. It may look like chaos to an outsider, but inside the system, the logic is neat. Fear is stabilized. Prices are known, and merchants pay because paying is cheaper than resisting. Along the North African coast, Barbary corsairs operate with state sanction. Ransoms take center stage. Captives become diplomatic problems and diplomatic payments. This is business with formal letters and embassies involved. The money still spends the same. Entire communities back home raise funds to redeem relatives. Consuls negotiate and carry instructions. Payments move through official channels. In a ledger, the line looks clean. A human life valued at a figure shipped through a court, secured by a treaty. The fact remains, piracy's business tactics thrive both in the shadows and under flags recognized by kings. Reputation keeps costs low. A well-known flag, the black one, with a symbol that makes hearts sink, does more work than a volley of cannon. The theater of approach matters. A captain, who shows powder and flame at the right moment, avoids a costly fight. A sailor who has heard stories about what happens to those who resist may fold even when his cargo is valuable. Reputation also attracts talent. A successful captain draws skilled hands. In a world where word of mouth travels from port to port, branding becomes literal. A cutlass drawn from the scabbard, a torch held high, a flag unfurled at the ideal distance. Surrender rates climb when legend arrives ahead of the hull. Law becomes the counterweight. Admiralty courts require witnesses and documents, and witnesses can vanish while documents can be mislaid. When the world decides to press down, royal pardons appear as a tool to peel crews away from their captains. A pardon offers a reset, a way to cash out and walk away if a man believes the rope is near. Governors who once smiled change expressions. Payrolls shift from thin to generous. In naval patrols, enforcement grows cheaper when many pieces of evidence have already been assembled by frightened merchants who keep records of losses. Patrol density increases along crucial routes, and cruising ranges narrow. The balance tilts. Fortunes, though sometimes fabulous in rumor, often melt between paydays. A few men retire to land with pockets deep enough to buy property and step into a different rank. More die broke, their last coin spent on a last night that smelled of rum and salt. Spending patterns speak of the moment. Fine clothes, loud taverns, games of chance, gifts for friends, and then sudden emptiness. Hidden hoards exist in stories and sometimes in sand, but most money flows as quickly as it is made. A life at sea teaches that tomorrow is never guaranteed. A life on the edge encourages the present to stretch its hands wide. Myths, fog, the glass. Treasure chests packed with gleaming coins are rare. Most real prizes look like ordinary trade goods. Barrels, boxes, bales. A ship's hold is a marketplace, not a dragon's cave. Pirate democracy is not a utopia. It is a set of agreements born from hard reality. The articles read like contracts, because they are contracts. Precise terms, strict penalties, clear shares, and strong authority. For officers who must maintain order when a storm breaks or a chase begins. Equality on deck is real in the sense that all hands get something and a voice on certain matters, but hierarchy still operates, with the captain and quartermaster sitting closest to the purse. As crowns coordinated and companies gained discipline, profit shrank. When wars cooled, letters of marque dried up, convoys made surprise difficult. Insurance firms priced risk with growing accuracy and pushed for patrols on the lanes that mattered most. Local allies grew expensive or vanished as their own risk climbed. A cruise took longer, fences demanded steeper discounts, and net shares fell. A business model that depends on speed and secrecy falters when both advantages are stripped away. Yet the legacy lingers. Maritime law toughened, insurance matured, convoy systems became standard in dangerous times. Intelligence networks rooted themselves in the same harbors where gossip once ruled. Strategic lessons remain clear enough for any era. Black market logistics thrive where routes are long, enforcement is weak, and bribes are cheap. Reputation can be worth more than force, and speed beats size if the target is a fat merchantman and the hunter knows how to strike at the right hour. The rapid thesis can be felt rather than simply stated. Piracy paid because it mastered 3 steps: capture, conversion, and distribution, better than its enemies could block them. The first 10 minutes of this story have revealed the core, the routes, the ports, the shares, the ways fear turned into fees, and the reason merchants learned to travel in packs. Now the lens narrows for a deeper walk through the money trail, step by step, with simple language and a focus on how this machine worked day to day. On a typical morning at sea, a sloop cuts through water that smells of salt and wood tar. The watch scans the line where blue meets blue. A speck appears, sailcloth catching the light. The captain notes the wind, the position, and the likely routes a merchant would use in this season. Risk and reward weigh each other like coins in opposite pans. If the chase begins, shot must be saved for the moment it speaks loudest. A warning cannon booms across water. If the target slows, flags signal intent. If the target runs, the gain lengthens, the hull hums, the rigging creaks with the strain of extra canvas. A single misstep, an overeager salvo that cripples a mast and ruins the cargo, means lost money. Violence is a tool with a budget. Once a ship is taken, the mood shifts. Panic dissolves into process. The quartermaster steps forward, with a tidy list in his head. Crew are separated, officers, skilled hands, and passengers. Officers may be held for exchange or ransom. Skilled hands are valuable if willing to sail with the victors. Some choose coin and freedom at the next port. Passengers are assessed discreetly. The goal is order, not chaos. Holds are opened with care. Barrels are examined. If they hold sugar or tobacco, they are ideal for quick sale. If they hold flour or biscuit, they may feed the crew and reduce costs for the next leg. If they hold silk, spices, or porcelain, the route to the right buyer must be planned to avoid suspicion. Coin is always counted twice. At the next friendly port, the real magic happens in rooms with low ceilings. Buyers do not advertise, but they can be found. A tavern welcomes certain faces after doors close for the night. Upstairs, a dozen men speak softly, while the quartermaster lays out samples. The scent of spice speaks through fabric. The feel of silk assures quality. Coin clinks, papers are drawn. A corrupt official passes by in the hallway without looking inside. Prices are not perfect. Pirates accept a discount because speed matters. If the cargo can be sold in a day, the ship can sail within 2, and the crew can lift cups within 3. The difference between a perfect price next month and a good price tonight is a risk not worth taking. Why do shares keep men loyal? Payment without long delays. In the merchant service, pay can lag months. In a navy, prize money might crawl through courts. On a pirate ship, a man sees his share quickly and knows how it was calculated. In a world where a bad day can break a mast or a life, immediacy becomes the meaning of fairness. Injury payments look crude now, but they were revolutionary then. A man who loses a leg receives coin enough to remain a man rather than a beggar. The logic is simple: protect the community by valuing each piece of it. In the shadows of this system, forged documents shine brighter than lanterns. A bill of lading that looks right can charm a skeptical dockmaster. Names of respectable firms applied to cargo that came aboard in a very different way. Calm nerves and open gates. Neutral flags tell a visual lie that patrols sometimes prefer to believe. If the world wants smooth trade, the world sometimes ignores small bumps. A little silver makes those bumps invisible. The merchant response grows sharper year by year. A convoy moving at the speed of its slowest ship tests the patience of men who measure profit by arrival time. But one escort with discipline can scatter a raider like a gull. Armed merchantmen lengthen the odds against an easy capture. The arithmetic changes: more powder spent, more risk of damage, less certainty of a clean prize. Insurers reward ships that follow safer patterns. They punish those that cut corners. Information circulates. A list in London can alter a plan in Barbados, and a message passed in a coffeehouse can lead to a warship waiting behind a headland that yesterday felt safe. Boomtown ports reflect the glow of money in loud colors. A tailor displays rich cloth and remembers sizes without measuring. A surgeon sets a broken arm now and collects payment after the next cruise. A carpenter can be paid in coin or in captured nails and iron. A brothel owner counts income in the morning and replenishes wine by afternoon. The economy blooms around the pirate ship as if it were a passing storm that waters everything it touches. When authority arrives with orders to close the tap, the shock is immediate. Some businesses pivot, others close. A few whisper and continue after midnight, because need and greed both prefer darkness. Returning to the case studies, Henry Morgan's March shows how privateering shields piracy's methods with law's robe. Rich targets, political permissions, and an organized chain of sale deliver results that satisfy investors and thrill a crew. The lesson is half moral and half mechanical. Call an act lawful, and money flows with less friction. But when the papers expire and wars end, men trained to hunt ships do not forget the taste of silver. Blackbeard's calculated theater, near Charleston, reveals a truth at the heart of the business model. Reputation reduces cost. Parade a streak of gunpowder in a beard, set a line of ships where they block the living vein of a city, and display both menace and restraint. Allow enough fear to travel into town to make the situation feel urgent. Then offer a simple solution. Pay a defined price and receive relief. It is not the randomness of cruelty. It is the method of a toll collector. Bartholomew Roberts turns the sea into a well-oiled workshop. The scale of his captures, dozens upon dozens, speaks of planning, not luck. The chain from capture to sale is rehearsed. Crew members hold precise roles. A prize ship is processed as predictably as a cart of wheat is processed by a mill. The tempo quickens payouts, and frequent smaller victories betray fewer ships to sudden disaster. This is risk management, written in sales. Ching Shi's system, far from the Caribbean, adds a chapter that shows piracy can resemble governance. Color-coded fleets, clear codes, fines, and set penalties create order out of potential chaos. Merchants pay because a single stable authority reduces uncertainty. The sea becomes a territory with taxes rather than a gambling table. Money prefers rules, even harsh ones, to constant surprise. The lesson echoes across oceans. Where rules exist, prices can be predicted. Where prices can be predicted, revenue scales. Barbary corsairs bring diplomats onto the stage. Negotiation replaces cutlass strokes. Ransom becomes a transaction with ledgers and wax seals. Families back in Europe organize funds. Governments trade promises. The humanity of the captives aches at the center. But the mechanism would still look familiar to a pirate from the Caribbean. Capture, evaluate, convert into money, distribute. The flag above the mast changes the ceremony, not the steps. Step by step, the profits depend on clarity. Crews that understand their articles argue less and fight better. Captains who match boasting with real speed take fewer foolish risks. Ports that price silence and signatures carefully host more business. merchants who share information blunt blades, insurers who map the sea in columns and rows, push nations to patrol more, and patrolling more costs less when routes are few and ships are many. The moral edges are hard and should not be sanded smooth. The sale of human beings stands in the record as unerasable evidence that this business was never clean. That thread runs through too many logs to be denied. To understand the system is not to excuse it. The historian's voice, calm and steady, sets out the facts and lets the numbers reveal the structure, while memory keeps a firm hold on what those numbers represent. When abnormalities move in concert, the atmosphere changes. A pardon offered at the right moment unspools a crew. A captain suddenly sees the cost of defiance rise above the benefit of one more cruise. Dockyards build faster escorts. Patrols learn to think like raiders. Harbors keep records and share them. Governors compare notes. What once felt like a wide ocean begins to resemble a net, not perfect but good enough. Scenes from daily life keep the picture grounded. On a quiet evening, a crew spends their share at a tavern that smells of wood smoke and spilled ale. A fiddler pulls a tune. A man who lost 2 fingers to a misfired pistol tells the story with pride, because the injury paid a set amount that allowed him to buy a coat so fine that strangers ask his trade. Another shows a ring and grins before pawning it in the back room for coins that vanish by dawn. On a dock at sunrise, a boy counts barrels for a broker who speaks politely to everyone and keeps the most dangerous men as clients without ever raising his voice. On a hill above the harbor, a house is built with money that floated in with a tide of captured goods. The economy looks normal until someone asks where it all began. A quick fact helps stitch the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean. Silver moves like a river. In the 17th and 18th centuries, silver coins serve as the world's common tongue in trade. A chest of silver taken in one sea can travel a quarter of the globe and still buy spices in another. This universality makes piracy profitable because conversion becomes simpler. A bale of silk needs a specific buyer. A stack of silver can be spent the same night anywhere that a tavern has candles. The fine print of articles reveals more than pay. It reveals culture. Some crews forbid gambling aboard. Others allow it under rules to prevent fights. Some set aside common funds for the injured beyond the formal schedule. A primitive insurance pool. Discipline provisions are blunt. Theft from the common store brings harsh penalty. Cowardice is punished. Striking a fellow seaman without cause draws fines or worse. The effect is to reduce friction. Every rule that prevents a quarrel during a storm protects the bottom line. Turning back to the financial core, the triangle of liquidation merits a slow, clear walk. Step 1. Capture. Ideally, the prize surrenders intact. Step 2. Friendly port. The definition of friendly changes with money and pressure. Sometimes it means a governor who likes gifts, and sometimes it means a harbor where everyone knows better than to ask questions. Step 3. Onward sail. The cargo, now stripped of obvious marks, flows along standard routes. A bundle of cloth that arrived dirty and unlabeled can leave cleaner and documented. It is the same bundle and not the same bundle at once. From there, wholesalers in larger cities receive goods that meet expected demand. The chain continues into shops where customers admire quality and speak warmly about good prices, without ever asking why. In this way, piracy's money circulates in the open market, disguised as ordinary commerce. Now focus returns to costs and ROI, with plain numbers for a mental ledger. A medium ship eats through provisions at a steady pace. Each week means a measurable reduction in barrels and biscuits. Powder stored too long degrades. Wasted powder is wasted coin. Sails age visibly. Repair crews must be paid. Bribes must be spaced and sized properly. Too much draws attention. Too little draws curiosity. A captain with good instincts treats these as adjustable levers. If patrols grow thick, he reduces burn rate by pulling back to a quiet inlet for repairs, then strikes fast when a gap appears. If good cargo floods the market in one port and prices fall, he sails to another, where the price remains strong. The ROI of a cruise depends not only on bravery, but on this flexibility. Insurance mathematics might seem dry, but the outcomes change lives. When insurers learn that a particular route has become deadly, they charge more to cover ships that try it. Merchants then pressure authorities to patrol that route. The patrols, in turn, raise the cost of piracy until the balance shifts. Pirates feel this as thinner purses and longer sails between prizes. Over time, the quiet logic of premiums and payouts presses just as hard as cannon fire. Amid these forces, individual captains leave unique signatures on the ledger of history. Henry Morgan's legal cloak, Blackbeard's staged menace, Roberts's speed, Ching Shi's organization, and Barbary State's formal ransoms form a spectrum of tactics. Each tactic shows a different path to the same goal: money that can be spent tonight, and security that can be purchased tomorrow. Each also shows a different path to decline when the environment turns against it. The story now bends toward outcomes. Where did the money go, and what did it change? In towns that served as pirate havens, growth spikes in odd places. A shipyard expands faster than population. A bakery sells more than residents could eat because passing crews buy provisions in bulk. A tailor becomes known for excellent coats in a climate that does not truly require them, because men who earn shares want to wear their success. When crackdowns come, these same businesses feel sudden hunger. Some adapt by serving navies and merchants. Others close quickly. The economy breathes with the blue water. Stories of buried treasure should be weighed against more ordinary commerce. But a few caches almost certainly existed. Money carried on a ship paints a target. Money hidden in sand waits for a safer day. The problem is simple. Sea captains die. Maps burn or lie. More often, a man spends his share where he stands. Human nature prefers a tangible pleasure now to a vague security later. That choice echoes in court records that list debts and in advertisements for lost rings and watches. The mental image of piracy as pure chaos fades under the steady light of this business analysis. It becomes clear that the model needed more than brave men. It needed management, quartermasters, balanced accounts, captains balanced risk, merchants balanced conscience and profit, officials balanced duty and temptation. Without those balances, the hull cracks quickly. With them, a ship could ride the waves of uncertainty for seasons. A closing arc begins to form. The system reaches its limits when the world's tolerance reaches its limits. No matter how agile the raiders, no matter how clever the fences, a coordinated web of patrols, courts, pardons, and premiums tightens. Individual captains can adapt for a while. Some move to new waters. Some switch tactics. Some accept a pardon and vanish into respectable life. But the average payoff shrinks. The seasonal rhythm breaks. Investors find better uses for their coin. A way of life slips into memory and myth. And yet, the educational value of this model remains high. Students of history can see in piracy a mirror for any underground economy, capture or production, conversion or distribution, and the ever-present need to pay insiders and neutralize outsiders. Branding, logistics, liquidity, and enforcement, all modern words, have earlier faces in flag, harbor, coin, and patrol. This is why the subject still fascinates. It feels modern because the logic feels familiar. The deeper layers of the business come into focus when the quiet paperwork is pictured alongside the loud cannon. In an airless storeroom with a single candle, a broker counts coins into small cloth bags, each tied with neat knots. A clerk scratches notes, not daring to write names, only symbols that he and the quartermaster both understand. The silver weighs the same in any century, but here it feels heavier because every coin shortens risk. A merchant who has bought contraband this week will defend the seller next week if a patrol asks the wrong question. Money builds alliances that speeches never could. Consider how a blockade turns time into profit, without firing more than a warning shot. In the morning, a harbor lies still. The tide is right, but ships do not move because the channel is watched by a captain with a reputation. The baker counts unsold loaves by noon. The apothecary looks at shelves that should be empty. A midwife sends a boy to search for crucial herbs that should have arrived on last night's boat. Pressure gathers like weather. At dusk, a delegation on the shore waves a flag of truce. Terms are simple: a chest of coin, certain supplies, a promise to let 4 ships pass. The exchange happens quickly. The harbor breathes again. The blockade was a toll and a lesson, and the lesson lingers longer than the toll. Speed deserves a closer look, because speed protects value. A captain who can refit in 3 days rather than 7 wins not just time, but freshness. Goods spoil. Rumors spoil faster. A cargo sold before word spreads draws better offers than the same cargo offered after every dockside gossip has told his cousin. The crew also reads time. If weeks pass without pay, discipline erodes. If days pass and silver appears, discipline feels like a friend rather than a leash. The clock is a partner in every profitable raid. To understand laundering without losing the thread, picture a stack of papers and a box of seals. A forged bill of lading does not need to be perfect. It needs to be plausible. Spelling must be tidy. Dates must make sense. The hand must look like a practiced clerk's hand, not like a sailor's impatient scrawl. A neutral flag carried in a locker comes out when a patrol's colors appear on the horizon. The transformation happens in minutes. The wrong flag disappears. The right flag flies, and the ship becomes the image it wishes to project. In the harbor, a small gift turns a dockside search into a dockside knock. A little silver moves from the strong box to the inspector's purse, and the line between suspicion and acceptance fades like chalk in rain. Insurance feels distant until the mathematics tip the deck. When underwriters agree that a certain strait has become a killing lane, premiums rise. Merchants who must use that lane organize convoys and hire escorts, accepting the slower pace as the price of fewer funerals and steadier ledgers. Pirates read these changes in the water. Targets come in clusters, guarded by a single ship that cannot be everywhere at once. The raider must choose carefully. A failed attack can damage a hull, drain powder, and break morale. A wise captain marks the convoy and circles for stragglers, preferring one easy meal to a dangerous feast. Boomtown ports deserve a slow stroll at street level. In Nassau, a tailor keeps a bolt of blue cloth hidden under a counter for men who pay in coin that smells faintly of salt and tar. In Port Royal, before the sea swallowed its pride, a jeweler writes down the sizes of rough hands that like rings too big for ordinary workmen. On Tortuga, a surgeon sharpens a knife and thinks about whether to buy new bottles for laudanum with coin received from a captain who keeps his word. On Île Sainte-Marie, the markets feel like crossroads where old routes bring new tastes. Porcelain and pepper, sandalwood and tea, all this far from the Atlantic's well-known stories. In each place, a girl runs with a basket, a boy sleeps under a cart, an old man smokes and watches ships with the same gaze he used on storms. The town lives because money arrives in waves. A closer pass over Henry Morgan's Panama affair isolates the money flows without losing the human scale. Marches, sieges, and raids do not produce neat invoices, yet behind the shouts, arithmetic rule. When cash is seized, it offers instant liquidity. When goods are taken, they offer choice. Sell close for a discount or carry farther for a premium and a risk. Political cover through privateering reduces the friction in distant courts. Investors smile when a prize is judged legal, and crews grin when payments arrive on schedule. The key is the blend. Coin for today's needs and goods for tomorrow's deal. Even livestock, awkward to move and loud to feed, becomes coin when sold inland to buyers who nod at uniforms and keep thoughts to themselves. Blackbeard's performance near Charleston turns the harbor into a theater where audience, stage, and cashier all share the same salt air. Hostages are not props, they are guarantees. The drama is rehearsed. The city needs something quickly. The blockade provides urgency. The negotiation names a price. The exchange completes the scene. Afterward, the story spreads faster than wind. Merchants remember the feeling of helplessness. They discuss contingency plans. They calculate the cost of going around a different way next season. Reputation is renewed without waste. Roberts's long list of prizes looks less like luck and more like a factory's output log. He chooses routes with care. Time strikes to the rhythm of trade winds and standardizes the disposal of cargo. A gunner who knows his captain likes clean captures learns to aim just off the bow to frighten rather than to crush. A carpenter who knows which parts fetch the best price removes them first from a stripped ship. A clerk keeps a consistent reckont of shares so that argument cannot undo a voyage's cohesion. In this order, men get paid, and paid men defend order. Jingxi's model allows a gentle explanation of how crime can mimic government. When the sea holds too few sheriffs, color-coded fleets reduce friendly fire, clear taxes, convert unpredictable shakedowns into predictable revenue. Merchants, after initial resistance, come to prefer a known expense to a constant dice roll. The Federation's rules reach into daily life. Which harbors can be used on which days, how fishermen are to be treated, what penalties apply to theft and assault. The result is a kind of peace with a price. Stability pays both sides. Barbary corsairs, operating under official eyes, move ransoms through channels that look like proper commerce. A captive's family raises funds. A city's church counts coins. A consul signs papers. The human pain is intense, yet the mechanics remain cool. A prisoner's name, age, and skills influence price. Negotiation moves through letters written in formal courtesies that veil urgency. Payments cross desks, with seals pressed into warm wax. In the end, a ledger closes with a sum, and a person walks back into daylight. The pirate's ledger adds a share. The state's ledger notes a fee. Business, however rough the inputs, proceeds. Reputation continues to lower costs because it alters the decisions of others before a sale is cited. A merchant with choice between two routes chooses the one rumored to be patrolled by a captain who lets most ships pass after a fee, rather than the one where cargo is always seized. A minor official, hearing a legendary name tied to a rumored arrival, spends that evening at home rather than at the dock. A harbor pilot, recalling stories of fire and smoke, guides a fragile ship into a back channel to be less visible. None of these choices change a single plank on a pirate ship, yet each protects it more than an extra cannon would. Law sharpens its knives through small improvements rather than spectacular changes. Admiralty courts simplify procedures for evidence. Testimony can be taken at sea and carried in safer forms. Bounties for informers rise, creating pressure inside crews. Pardons are time-limited, pushing hesitant men to choose. Governors share letters, building regional strategies rather than isolated efforts. The cost of operating in old havens climbs as officers with fresh orders refuse familiar gifts. A captain sees the old corridor thinning and tests new waters, only to find that distant patrollers now coordinate with local enforcers faster than before. The money's afterlife on land deserves a human eye. Some shares become property. A small farm, a modest house with shutters that close cleanly, a fishing boat with a new net. Other shares evaporate in nights of laughter that last until morning forgets the words. A few men try their hands at trade and discover that buying and selling without a cutlass requires patience more than courage. Some return to sea under flags that pay less but promise sleep without fear. Others drift until they vanish into towns where no one asks too many questions. The silver that floats so fast at sea seeps into soil and stone and song ashore. Myths still press close, but evidence turns them gently aside. The image of a chest overflowing with perfect gold coins belongs to paintings and plays. Real prizes are bundles, barrels, bolts, and bales. The glitter appears at the end of the chain when goods become coin through quiet hands. The myth of absolute equality on deck misses the purpose of clarity in roles. Without the authority of a captain and the balance of a quartermaster, ships fracture at the first crisis. The articles do not dream, they instruct. They cut arguments short before waves get high. When the business model begins to fail, the failure is not a single moment, but a slope. Profits thin. Storms feel longer because repairs take more from a smaller purse. Fences ask for larger discounts because they sense risk. Crews argue more because the next payout feels uncertain. A captain pushes farther, increasing risk, and is caught by a patrol that would have been easy to dodge 5 years before. In a coffeehouse far away, an insurer nods at a report and lowers a rate for a route that has grown safer. A ship that would have carried guards now sails light. Piracy depends on a certain temperature of chaos. When commerce cools the water, the fever breaks. Legacy flows on in traces that modern travelers would recognize. Insurance contracts today still model risk and price it. Convoys still form in dangerous places, though the ships may be trucks on a road or servers carrying packets through a network. Intelligence sharing between firms and states continues because bad actors move fastest in silence. The black market lesson remains vivid. Where routes are long, enforcement thin, and bribes cheap, shadow trade will rise. Reputation remains a currency, and speed still beats size. A short, calm panorama of a single cruise, from preparation to payout, ties the threads. A crew signs articles that list shares and penalties. Provisions are loaded, barrels of water, salted meat, biscuit, peas, oil for lamps. Powder is kept dry in a magazine that smells of wood and sulfur. Small repairs are finished. A sail stitched, a yard tightened. The captain and quartermaster agree on first targets, based on recent whispers. A merchant lane, where sugar ships run fat and slow. At sea, days pass in routine, swabbing decks, practicing with muskets, sharing stories until the lookout calls. The chase is measured. The shot is timed to prompt surrender. Boarders move fast, focused more on cargo than on glory. The prizes officers are separated with careful courtesy. The goods are listed. The ship is judged too slow to keep and too visible to release. It is stripped, scuttled, and left to drop like a stone. At the nearest friendly harbor, a buyer appears, because a buyer was warned. Goods go out the back while smiles appear at the front. 2 days later, shares jingle and a new target list is agreed. The sea resets to blue, but the ledger has changed. Sometimes, a cruise stumbles. A squall rises without warning. A mast splinters, and the carpenter earns his extra share by taming chaos with iron nails and steady hands. A sailor slips and breaks a leg. The surgeon's kit gets used. The article's injury payment is promised, not forgotten. Powder spoils and must be replaced at an ugly price. A target turns out to be tougher than it looked and shows teeth at the wrong moment. The crew learns again why speed and prudence ride together. A slow ship with brave men and old powder loses to a fast ship with fresh supplies and sharper information. The quieter actors in this economy, the brokers and fences, leave light footprints but heavy impacts. A broker knows which warehouse manager looks straight through a cart full of re-exported goods. He knows which clerk can be trusted with small lies and which must never be asked to do more than stamp a form. He has 5 ledgers, 1 clean, 1 less clean, 2 for memory, and 1 for the day he may need to vanish. He calls men by their first names and never writes them down. He sleeps lightly. He is the hinge between theft and market, and he grows old only if he respects that hinge more than he loves his profit. Inside ships, the social fabric holds because the payroll system feels fair. When quarrels flare, the quartermaster steps in, backed by rules that everyone accepted before the anchor rose. Fines are issued, not as humiliation but as reminders. The cook, often overlooked in stories, keeps the crew calm with predictable meals. Hunger undoes discipline faster than danger. The gunner stores powder in measured charges to prevent waste. The bosun checks rope with a lover's attention because rope is like. Every roll, paid and acknowledged, protects the bottom line as surely as any cannon. When law hunts harder, pirates search for shadows in new places. Some move to less patrolled coasts. Others switch to smuggling those goods that official tariffs make expensive. A few accept pardons and use their knowledge to guide navies, earning coin by showing officers how raiders think. The sea remains the same, but the roles swap labels. The grammar of pursuit and evasion changes uniforms, not sentences. A few stories end with a captain buying a small home far from shore. He becomes a man who nods to neighbors and speaks little of the old days. He invests in a warehouse, a shop, or a small inn. He locks his door at night and dreams of waves that no longer rock the floor. If asked where the money came from, he says, "Trade," and points to bales in the corner. He is not lying, not fully. The goods did pass through his hands. The papers exist. The past is a ledger closed by silence. The myths that persist do so because they comfort or thrill. A child prefers a chest full of coins to a warehouse full of sugar because the chest is simple. A listener prefers a tyrant, captain, or a perfect democracy because it fits a neat story. The reality is less theatrical and more interesting. A floating workplace with a compensation plan, a risk schedule, a marketing department called reputation, and a sales arm that meets in the second floor of a tavern. Understanding this shape does not take away excitement. It replaces noise with clarity. As the arc curves toward closure, the system's death is weighed with the same calm used to weigh its birth. Peacetime cut the supply of legal hunting. Coordinated patrols thickened. Insurance and information tightened the weave. Local allies decided that the price of silence had risen too high, and some feared the gallows more than they loved silver. Stragglers held on, improvising with smuggling and smaller raids. But the age of wide-open business at sea slipped behind a headland. What remained was memory, law, and story. The legacy lines resolve into a final set of lessons. Capture works when it is clean and fast. Conversion works when papers and people cooperate. Distribution works when shares are transparent and swift. Countermeasures win when they join up. Law, money, information, and ships sailing in company. The past speaks to the present without raising its voice. The closing scene slows so every listener can step off the gangplank with steady feet. The thesis stands. Piracy paid because it mastered capture, conversion, and distribution, until the world raised the price of each step. The map of money, those bright points of Nassau, Port Royal, Tortuga, and Ile Sainte-Marie, shows how ports turned raids into markets. The payroll and the articles show how crews stayed loyal. The merchant response and the courts show how the model ended. The cases, Morgan, Blackbeard, Roberts, Ching-Shi, and the Barbary States, show that many seas told one story with accents that differed but words that rhymed. 3 final takeaways settle like anchors. First, the ports and networks mattered as much as the ships and guns. Without markets, plunder is just clutter. Second, the payroll and incentives kept order on deck and turned dangerous work into a job men understood and defended. Third, the countermeasures, insurance, convoys, patrols, pardons, and courts did not need to be perfect. They only needed to be cheaper and steadier than chaos. The last images are gentle. A quartermaster closes a small wooden chest, satisfied that the sums match. A broker blows out a candle and opens a window to let smoke drift into a night that smells of tide. A carpenter smooths the edge of a repaired spar and smiles because a ship will sail true tomorrow. A former captain stands in a market far from salt water, counting coins for a purchase of seed, learning a slower arithmetic. The sea keeps its secrets, but the business it hosted can be seen clearly from shore. As the credits of history would roll if this were a film, a quiet invitation points to the next harbor. The next deep dive waits in the shadows of Nassau's upstairs auctions. where a quartermaster's whisper could turn a bale into coin before midnight, or in the strict day in the life of a quartermaster who balanced fear with fairness on a moving deck. For now, the ledger closes, the lantern dims, and the story of how piracy paid big rests in calm water.